Every year I learn that I love the Lord and I love the people more. Because the more you get into it and the more experience you have, the more you see the grace of having people in your life and the joy of the relationships.
Is that something they teach you in seminary?
No. You can't teach that. You have to experience it. It's in seminary they teach you they give you the tools for what you need to use, you know, the biblical understandings, the biblical directions. Everyone will express their faith in a little bit different way based upon their gifts, their talents, the focus of life, their calling. All of these things blend together. So they don't teach you that in seminary. What they teach you is the tools. Then you have to get out and you have to actually begin the experiential part. Now, I will say this. Experientially, you learn how to relate to people in a seminary environment. My dad was a very fine minister. He was a good man. He did a good job as a minister. And what I learned from him was from tagging along. And I enjoyed doing that. And I felt at a very early age that this is what I should do. Not because Dad did it. In fact, Dad kind of didn't encourage it until I finally made a decision, and then he encouraged it. Because he never wanted me just to follow in his footsteps, so to speak. But I watched him as he dealt with people. I knew him at home when he would come home after dealing with somebody and was concerned about their life or could sense the compassion that he had for people or things like this. So I really don't know how not to have relationships with people.
Did that impress you when you saw your father doing that? I mean, what kind of impression did that make on you?
Oh, I watched Dad do things that I could easily admire because of, I think it was the compassion part, the part that he helped people know they mattered. And you see, to me, everybody matters. There's not a person in this community that doesn't matter. There's not a person in this church who does not matter. You know, it's a very beautiful gift because to be able to see that, because you see, that's what God called us to do. God said, through Christ in a lot of ways, He said everybody matters. There was nobody He turned away.
That's great in theory and sometimes very difficult in practice, isn't it?
Well, it's always difficult, but what in the life isn't difficult? You know, what isn't difficult? There are times when, and I struggle with things at times, of course. And you struggle with relationships at times, of course. But what in life that's worthwhile doesn't challenge you at some point? And my favorite saying is that no sailor ever distinguished himself on a calm sea. So when it's rocky, that's when you really begin to make something out of it.
So you're saying the history of this church is interwoven with the history of this city? It
is. It absolutely is. Our sister church is First African Baptist. We share a founder in First African and First Baptist. And if you read the journey of this church from its beginning, you know, when these churches were put in place by the city fathers, because this was an outpost. This city was an outpost. And they made a conscious decision to grant land to the Baptists, the Methodists, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Catholics, and Jews to build houses of worship to bring education, morality, families, and values to this area so that it wouldn't just be an outpost like a frontier city. And because of that, this church accepted, along with the others in this area up here, we accepted the responsibility to be a part of this community and to help advance the community. Regardless of whether the people are members of the church or not, that's not the point. It's to be a force for good and positive and encouragement in this community.
So what have you grown to love about Columbus?
I love Columbus. And I love Uptown. I love Columbus and I love Uptown. I'm so glad First Baptist, along with St. Luke and the First Pres and all, I'm glad that they were wise enough during the lean years in Uptown not to move and to keep the presence and to kind of keep the light burning here. Because now we have a neighborhood for the first time in, 80 years? And we have a chance to be a part of Columbus's development and its resurgence and to be a voice here, just like we were at the very beginning, a voice for hope and good and positive values. We have a chance to do that here.
You've been here now more than 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen downtown Columbus grow?
I've seen it grow in its hospitality. It is a place to go now. It's a place to be. Roxanne and I love going down there on like a Friday night when they're having a concert, or when they're having, or we go have dinner down there or something. It is just absolutely wonderful. And it's like a little town. People call you by name and they wave at you across the street, and they pull out a lawn chair and they're listening to somebody play a guitar up there, or it's incredible. It is an idyllic kind of place to be. I've watched it be reborn. And I think the magic of it is that so many people have offered so much selflessly to bring this rebirth to be. I think it's been done in a healthy way. It's not just like a company coming into town and creating something there. It's a very entrepreneurial area, and everybody there is taking. It's just like I preach. You find your gift, you use your gift to the fullest, and then you let that gift bump up against somebody else's, and you make a whole. And uptown Columbus is truly that kind of place. It's a place where everyone's gift bumps up against everyone else's, and when everybody's holding hands together, and it cuts across every line, when you hold hands together, you make a community. When I first came here, I knew there was something special about this church when I walked out on Sunday morning and I saw the president of CB&T sharing a hymnal with a homeless man. And I knew at that point there was something particularly wonderful and barrierless about so much of this community. I knew that had to be.
But we still face our social issues, don't we?
Of course we do. Every place does. But if you put ours in comparison to other communities, ours are nowhere near the other communities. The reason they continue to be a challenge is it's the same kind of challenge you have when you go to school and you take your entry-level course, and then the longer you're at college, you take upper-level courses and so forth.
To 400-level courses.
To 400-level courses. So a lot of our social interaction and some of the things that we count as challenges are merely upper-level courses in this. We're not at the basic level, but I can show you places in Georgia, all through the country, that are still at basic level courses. We have advanced and had such good leadership in people like Bill Turner, who've given, and Johnny Flakes, who gave such vision through the years to bringing races together, or others who have helped, Tom Black helping to lead with some of the wisdom and the economics, and Frank Brown with some of the things that he developed. These things helped to create a community that moved us out of the basic level courses. We're up in 400, 500, 600 level. So when people talk about problems in the community, I'm thinking, of course, because once we get this one solved, we're moving to another level and we're going to deal with another challenge. There's something about the good of a community and the positive and the hope of a community that brings that brightness, that lightens it up. So I'm not going to say that it will drown it out, but maybe in a sense it does. What it really does is it just shows it up for what it is.
Are good preachers also good politicians?
We get accused of it sometimes. Now, a good definition of politics to me is that it's relational. And I've been talking about relationships in this whole interview. That a person, when you talk about political, it's taken on such a bad connotation. People believe that if you say somebody's political, it's almost an insult to them. The truth of the matter is that a person who has a really good political understanding is a person who will lead well and will lead by example and will be a servant leader. It's basically dealing with relationships. I kind of cringe at the idea of a preacher being a politician that way. Politics has always fascinated me. But what I do believe is that if you define politics as doing the best for the people and leading from your heart and inspiring others to be who they should be, then that would be something I think a minister needs to do.
What's nearly 38 years of marriage taught you?
That I really, really lucked up 38 years ago. I mean, that the fact of the matter is, Roxanne and I met each other in the 6th grade, and we became friends, and our families were friends, and we did things as families, and we grew up knowing each other and liking each other and becoming best friends and falling in love and marrying and never dated anybody else, either one of us. What 38 years has taught me is that God took care of that journey for me and gave me the gift from the very beginning, the gift of Roxanne. I mean, she is by far the best part of my life. And she is by far she's the most wonderful, spiritual, focused, good person I've ever known. Ever. I always tell people that 99% of what I do, I credit to her, and that I'm taking way too much credit with 1% of my own.
So your journey in marriage has been very similar to your journey in faith?
Yeah. And but you also learn every year that you don't know as much as you thought you did. And so it goes from this beginning where you think you know everything and you're going to go in and win and save the world and change the world. And then you get to a point that you realize that you're just on a journey, and that each day you're trying to do a little bit more, and that the only way you know of any accomplishment is if you look back and see what's in the wake, as opposed to being able to stand here and say, I've done this and this and this.
60 years old, how much longer do you see yourself in the pulpit as a pastor of a large church? Not trying to retire you, by the way.
Yes, well, that's a good question. Forever. I can't imagine myself not doing what I'm doing, and I guess as long as my health holds and as long as the congregation and the Lord feel like I ought to be here, then I plan to stay until I get to the point where I can. One of the coolest things in the world would be to be here on the 200th anniversary, but that's 14 years out. So who knows?